Good morning, everyone. Happy hump day. We're going to go ahead and get started since it's 10 o'clock. Just a couple of Zoom etiquette reminders. Keep yourself muted. You will be able to put questions into the chat today. Due to recent Zoom updates, we've had to make some updates to our charter chat security settings. And everyone, all attendees must authenticate in order to join. So you'll have to register ahead of time with your desired breakout room. And that's a pretty important part because our folks behind the scenes usually have to scramble to get those breakout rooms ready. So when you register, if you just put in which breakout room you'd like to be in, that makes it a lot easier for them. Also, just a reminder that if you happen to be assigned to the wrong breakout room, please come back to the main room and let the person in the main room know that you'd like to be assigned to a different room. So I think you probably have all gotten the message that this session is being recorded. Only the main room is recorded. The breakout rooms will not be recorded. And then today we will cover some hot topics, fiscal oversight, and we'll have our breakout rooms. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we also have with us today all of the CASI partners. And on this first slide, can you go back one slide, please? Are the partners from the Santa Clara County Office of Education. That includes me, Mifala Fairley, as well as Michelle Johnson, and also Cynthia Tapia, Shalu Sharma, and Matt Doherty. I always say your name wrong, Matt, sorry. Next slide, please. In addition, we have our partners from CCAP. The three people that you see there are the folks who typically join this meeting, but this morning we have Tom and Dave representing CCAP. We also have some partners from the California Department of Education. We have Allison Ball, Craig Heimbichner, and I'm not sure if Sandy Ridge is here. She may come a little bit later. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to start this morning with Tom reviewing some of the items that we have had to put into the parking lot. I think it's Tom.
Well, it's me for just a quick intro.
Sorry.
We have a parking lot, and the purpose is that we've got a lot of questions and a variety of topics. So if you're new to the charter chat, we want you to know that there are times where we have questions, but we need to bring them back to the appropriate parts of the department for guidance. So it's not that we're not wanting to answer a question right away. Sometimes we need to do homework. Your questions aren't being ignored, hence we have the parking lot. So keep the questions coming, and we'll share guidance when it comes back, which means we move to the next slide, which is where Tom will do some of that. So next slide, please.
And Tom, before you jump in with the previous charter chat questions, just want to let everyone know that in the chat, there is a link to the slides. Tom?
Great. Well, these are just a couple of the questions that have popped up in our recent conversations, and we'll just touch on them briefly. We did get a question about, hey, is there a template out there for issuing a letter of concern to a school? And while there isn't sort of one standard template, I would say, as a practical matter, you can, if you just Google letter of concern or notice of concern, a lot of these are public documents that are put out there. And so you can find examples. They tend to be very fact specific and very school specific. So that, but in general, there's a kind of a good overview that actually Michelle had shared, which is the FIRAC acronym. That's FIRAC. Facts, issues, rule, analysis, and conclusion. So what's prompting this notification? What's the issue that we see or that we're at least concerned about and need some responses to? What's the rule, the applicable rule? If there's analysis at that point already and a conclusion to be had, you put that in there, and usually it's sort of next steps for the school. Get back to us by such and such reporting on what you're going to do about it. If there's any, I'm not sure where the question came from, but if you want to follow up with any of us and, hey, can you point me to any, we're happy to do that, but you can also find them online. And you can find guidance sometimes for what goes in them in the intervention protocols that a lot of authorizers may have, where they say, this is what a notice of concern, this prompts a notice of violation, this, the various hierarchy of sort of notices, sometimes they lay out there what kind of components each of them has in it. Then moving on to the next one, we had a question that came up in the quarterly training that we just had about renewals, and it's a broader question than just renewals, but the context in which it came up was a renewal one, and that is legal considerations regarding making sure that charters are serving student populations equitably and looking at performance data related to that. And so that is, you'll find in the renewal provisions of the statute where even, under the new, three-tiered kind of thing, which we're kind of getting to incrementally, but even there, it maps out, look at the subgroups when you're analyzing the performance data. And in some of the tools that aren't statutory, but are out there to help, like the CCAP annual report toolkit, we kind of have a model that says, while you're kind of checking in with the school, look also to the student population. So you're tracking that as you go.
Okay, great. So Michelle's going to take us through some legislative updates and some new laws that just went into effect.
Well, hi, everybody. So we are now at a new legislative session. Something that you guys might want to know how to do is to track the bills. So the 23-24 sessions just started, and the bills for the Budget Act of 2023, which is in our resource page, have been posted. And there's a feature under Leg Info called keyword tracking, which allows an easy way to be notified when bills impacting a particular subject are introduced or amended. So we did a search under charters, and we've included the list that has popped up so far. Once you specified that keyword to track, you will automatically be subscribed into to keywords when the bills are introduced or amended. For bills that have already been introduced or amended prior to your keyword tracking, you'll need to subscribe to each bill individually. So we put all of that into the resource page, and you will have that as soon as this meeting is over, hopefully. So next slide, please. New laws just came into effect. In 2022, Governor Newsom vetoed 169 bills and signed 997 into law. Here are some of the new laws which took effect as of January 1st, 2023, which apply to charter schools, and you may want to be aware of. There are more details on the resource page regarding each of these new laws. So just know that there's a lot that are coming up. Next slide, please.
And that's Tom.
So a little bit of a quiet time in terms of ACCS and the state board relative to, the state board relative to charters and the ACCS at all. In the last round of meetings, essentially what we had was a request for a non-classroom funding determination from a classroom-based school that had some mold issues, so they had to go non-classroom for a while, and that determination went through, and the department recommended its approval, and it went through. So kind of quiet on that front over the holiday kind of period.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. So now we are moving into our section on hot topics, which I call news you can use. So we'll get some relevant information on program-related issues and fiscal-related issues. Next slide, please. And so Matt, program oversight.
Sure. So the 2022 dashboard has been released on December 15th. The 2022 California School Dashboard restarted for the first time since 2019, showing that California's 4- and 5-year high school graduation rates hit all-time highs in 21-22, while the state's chronic absenteeism mirrored national trends. The CDE has provided local educational agencies with the 2022 dashboard summary document to provide essential background information and factors to consider when reviewing the data reports. Just some reminders: the school accountability report card is due and must be posted by February 1st. Physical fitness tests They did restart last year, but just another reminder, charter schools, even those that do not require PE in their charter, are still required to give the physical fitness test. So don't overlook, to make sure charter schools don't overlook that. And those results get put into your SARC. So just again, keep that in mind. There's some additional information on the resource page about the PFT. And the quarterly regional training, the CASI quarterly regional training, was held on January 13th. It was very well attended and had lots of great info. And the resource page and the video have been posted for that quarterly regional training on the CASI webpage. Next slide, please.
Dave. Dave, you're muted, Dave.
Yes, I am muted. There was a question last time, and we talked a little bit about renewal timelines, and we wanted to make sure that people had a better visual of what those timelines could be. And so we were talking about a typical submission might be in August of 2023. You know, as we've said, that starts the clock. And the important part is that once the clock starts, you have the 90 days to, in fact, get to the point of having your first hearing and then to have an action. The decision by a district would be then in November of 22nd. Now, the limitation is that there's 30 days to appeal. That's different than in the past. So it's a very quick turnaround time. And there's the need to send the copy to the district at the same time it's that you originally, the charter originally made application to, as well as to submitting to the county. There's also a significant amount of paperwork in terms of any documentation, in terms of the transcript and those other types of information. So there's time built there. But then the county that would receive the appeal would be filed by December 22nd. That 90-day clock starts again. If they take the full 90 days, you have up till March 21st, 2024. But then you have 30 days to submit. But the issue there is that the ACCS and State Board agenda deadlines also come into play, and we may not know all those at this point yet, or they could change. So it's a matter of keeping it. And that would turn into a State Board appeal filed on March 28th, 2024. And again, the caveat is those dates can change. And that would then result in potentially a State Board meeting with a decision in July of 2024. The challenge there is that an SBE decision may be after the term expires, which has its own complications. So the purpose here was to give people a heads up about what the calendar, how it plays out, and how some of your some of the charters that you authorize may be concerned about some of those timelines and be looking to have, well, one is to make sure they're not submitting late when there's a concern about needing to go through the full appeal process, but there's also a concern that some of them may be applying earlier, which they, because of the need to avoid having a shutdown, that's a legitimate concern on their part. So it just does make the need to have the conversations with the charters that you authorize now, and getting clarity of what their intent is and what your needs are, so that there's no confusion and there's clarity going forward.
Great. Next slide takes us to hot topics for fiscal oversight. Cynthia Shalhoub.
Thank you, Mifla. So as far as hot topics in fiscal oversight goes, the 23-24 governor's proposal is at the top of the list, with the governor's proposal being the starting point of the budget development process for LEAs, including charter schools. Today, we want to provide a very high-level summary of some of the areas that might be of interest to charter schools and authorizers. Overall, the governor's budget is $22.5 billion short, but with a COLA proposed at 8.13%, K through 12 education is mostly not impacted by this budget shortfall. Of course, this budget proposal is the first step in a very long process that involves many discussions in the upcoming months, with the next version of the budget expected in May, and eventually a final budget in June. As charter schools develop their first iteration of their 23-24 budget, they will note that in the area of Charter School Facility Grant Program, or SB 740, it is proposed to receive the 8.13 COLA, and consistent with the 2022 Budget Act, a one-time investment, which includes augmentations for other cost reimbursements. However, it is worth noting that the proposal does not include any further augmentation funding past this one-time investment. Next, with the LCFF Equity Multiplier, it is proposed that eligibility for this funding is based on individual school sites' federal free meal eligibility. Those elementary and middle schools serving 90% and high schools serving 85% of students eligible will receive this funding. Please note that this eligibility requirement is not the same as free and reduced price meals, just free meals. In the area of transitional TK, in addition to no changes to TK ratios, the proposal does not include any facilities funding specifically for charter schools that opt in to offer TK. And now I will pass it along to my colleague Shalu, who will take us through the rest of the highlights.
Thank you, Cynthia. And hello, everyone. So I just want to highlight something that we are all aware of, Arts, Music, and Instructional Material Block Grant. For 23-24, Governor has proposed an approximately about 1.2 billion cut, which is roughly about 1/3 reduction in one-time funding that was provided in 22-23 enacted budget. So just to be mindful of, to keep that in back pocket in case this funding does get reduced, even though the governor has to go through a special legislation. Next, just to be mindful of first interim and annual audit feedback. By this time, most of the authorizers should have completed their review of charter school first interim and 21-22 audit report, and are in the process of sharing that feedback or asking any clarifying questions as needed from their charter schools. Here at SCCOE, we share we share any feedback from our schools during the fiscal annual oversight meeting that we conduct during February and March. So just to be mindful that, just to be on a lookout and have any clarifying questions from your schools, or if they do have any audit findings, here at SCCOE, we do request them a written response, what steps they are taking to remedify those findings. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Shalu and Cynthia. So CCAP has its statewide conference coming up this summer, and we'll give you the dates a little later on a later slide. But they would like to get some input from you about topics that you would like to see covered at the statewide conference. And in additional, we at CASI would like to know some of the topics that you want covered at our next charter chat in February. So we have 2 poll questions that Allison is going to launch right now, and we would love it if you would just participate in those questions by answering those questions. And then unfortunately, you aren't able to write in any topics. So when you join your breakout groups, please be sure to add any additional topics that are not listed here to the Jamboard, so that we have a record of those things and can add them to our list. Thank you. So we are going to go into breakout rooms now. The non-authorizer group will be facilitated by Shalu and Sandy and me. The North region will be facilitated by Janice, Dave, Craig, and Cynthia. Central will have Tom and Matt, and the Southern region will have Michelle, Allison, and I don't know if Debbie's here, but Michelle and Allison for sure. Please make sure that you are in the right breakout room. If you are not, you're welcome to come back to the main room and asked to be put into the room you'd like to be in. And if you are not an authorizer, please make sure that you are in the non-authorizer group. All right, and in this breakout, you can focus on renewal or any topics for February, for the February charter chat, or anything that you would like some feedback on. All right. Rooms have been launched. Please join your room. Thanks everyone for participating in the breakout rooms. Tom, do you want to start with what your group talked about?
Yeah, sure. We had good suggestions for things that we could bring back to a charter chat and or programming at the CCAP conference, and I'll just highlight them. Non-classroom based oversight generally, but also some very specific questions like when a sort of a hybrid blended program wants to go all non-classroom based, that kind of goes against what some of the research says about serving at-risk populations. And so how do you navigate that as a authorizer with that material revision? A bunch of questions around DAS schools about the metrics used for renewal purposes, about how often assessments should be administered if it's in the DAS category. And so that there were some questions that I think are doable in a charter chat that we could come back with next month, but also that suggests some deeper dive things might be helpful for either the CCAP conference or quarterly training for CASI. So stay tuned on that. I think that kind of summarizes it from our end, unless somebody from my group wants to chime in and add to something I forgot. All right.
So I was in the non-authorizer partners group, and we had charter schools, we had charter school support groups like CCSA, we had a back office provider, and they gave some ideas about things that might go into the February charter chat and or be included in the statewide conference. There were a couple of requests about clarifying teacher credentialing, especially as related to Williams monitoring. And then there was a request for a discussion about the criteria for approving countywide charter schools, and that many of them are being approved when the rule is thou shalt not approve unless they can prove that they are providing a service that couldn't be provided within a district. There was a request for an explanation of the new reasons for denial, like a really clear explanation that's not in legalese. And then just some more information on renewal, especially around the use of verified data and alternative data. And then we had a really interesting question about, from a charter school that has 4 different authorizers, 3 separate districts, and 1 county office. And they were wanting to know, so they have to, serve 4 different masters, wanting to know if there is a way that the charter school could be moved to just one authorizer. And so, which would be the county, I guess. And so we don't see any mechanism for doing that unless they are denied by a district and then come to the county office on appeal. And so I just wanted to share that with the group, because that is not a question that I had ever thought of, but it did come up in our group. Michelle, do you want to talk about?
Sure. So the Southern group, we talked about MOUs and processes about MOUs. We talked a little bit about renewals and renewal timelines. And so that's still something that we need to, that's still a burning question for all of us. And then the last piece was the difference about a statewide benefit charter versus a state Board of Education approved charter school, and what's that renewal process looking like? So that's a question that we'll probably be bringing back to our next charter chat.
And then Dave.
Well, actually, Janice was leading the conversation
Oh,
on
okay.
our breakout, so please.
Denise.
Sure. A lot of conversation around representation of student groups and documentation of those processes for recruitment of those students. So looking at demographics and how ensuring equity among student groups, especially when you have what we call niche charter schools that may have an emphasis or focus on a particular student population or demographic. And so just ways that they're able to demonstrate that they are recruiting students and what some of the key processes are around that. And then also upon renewal, this was more a question, can the authorizer consider whether they're able to serve the interests of the entire community if there is discrepancy in representation of student groups? What does that look like on the impact of the entire community, similar to the fiscal impact? And how does that play into renewal? And Joe, let me know if anything on that specific conversation that I missed or you wanted to add. And then anything else that
The only thing
captured?
that we also had, or the further discussion on timelines and about how the
Yes.
impact of timelines for a school that might feel that they're at risk, that would generate a much several month earlier submission, because if they're worried about that, they're worried about their students and they're worried about, frankly, their staff that may need to find alternatives if in fact on an appeal it's not successful. So just wanted to
Mhm.
add that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Janice. Next slide, please. Tom, can you introduce our meeting feedback survey?
Yeah, as usual, we beg and plead, please take a second to give us your feedback. I mean, we got some good feedback from the breakout sessions, but again, we're always looking to fine tune and improve the usefulness of everything we do in CASI to those of you who are in the field doing the work. So if you take a sec to share your feedback with us, we were just really celebrating that at the last quarterly training we had, we got maybe more survey feedback results than we've ever had, which is just really great. And I promise you, we do hang on every word you share with us. So take a second to let us know how we're doing. And there's the link is also in the chat. Allison just put it.
We're currently at 2 responses with
Yay.
Already?
66 participants. So go and get it.
Oh, come on.
All right, so I'm going to ask you all to multitask. So while you're filling out the survey, next slide, please. We're going to open up. We have about 8 minutes for questions. I thought we had a slide in here about next events.
We do. The next slide would be upcoming events.
Okay,
There we go.
all right, there we go. I don't have that slide. So is that me?
I'm not sure I can jump in and do it and then others chime in. Coming events, there is San Diego County has an Authorizers Connection training that we want you to take note of coming up February 10th. We'll be back here for Charter Chat, as always, the last Wednesday, February 22nd. CASI has a couple of presentations coming up at other conferences in case you and or your colleagues are going. One will be at SSDA again, and that is a topic. We're going to do a short version of what also will be our topic for our next quarterly training, and that is survival tips for small authorizers. So it's less about the substance of authorizing, although there may be some connection to that, but it really is about like, gosh, I'm the 0.2 FTE person, and I'm also in charge of instruction for my whole, how do I make this work? And we want, by the way, if you are in that category and you have good ideas that have helped you survive, we'd love to hear from you as we sort of put together. We have a lot of ideas and we have connections to a lot of small people, but so I'm skipping ahead a little bit because that's also going to be the topic of the quarterly trainings in April. But intervening in there, we're going to be doing another sort of Charters 101 with a particular focus on finance at the CASBO session. So if you've got some finance people who, maybe you draw on their help for the fiscal stuff, but they don't know as much about Charter World, we'll be doing that specifically at CASBO. Then going back to the virtual training, watch for the interest survey that will be coming to you from CDE. But here's the way it's going to work this time. You've seen we've played around with the model of how we offer the in-person or the hybrids and trying to find kind of the right mix for a different thing. The way we're going to handle April is this. There will be the virtual one on April 14th. But then we've said the last 2 weeks in April. So rather than us saying, hey, if you have people that want to meet on the Friday, the last 2 weeks in April, if you've got 5 human beings who want to sit in a room with us, we will try to get somebody there from us and be able to do the deeper dive. That's the 3-hour one, authorizers only, versus the 2-hour one, everybody welcome at the virtual one. So it was 10 when we tried it for January, didn't have enough interest, but because of the topic being smalls, if you've got 5, we'll figure out how to make that work. And the interest survey will give you ways to sort of chime in. If you don't have to have the 5 to chime in, just it helps if you do. But if you just want to put yours down, we'll cross-index who's where. But if you know people are interested, make sure they fill out the survey too, so we can see where we might have a grouping of 5. And then again, we brought it before, and again, thank you for your feedback on it. But the next statewide authorizers conference is on the calendar for June 13 through 16 in Palm Springs. Somebody asked in the chat, hey, is there a website page on it? There's some very basic information because we're in the preliminary stages. We just nailed down the whole contract, hotel contract and stuff, but stay tuned. We'll keep you up to date on it at CASI, but there's also the CCAP website will have the details there. More to come. Anything I missed from my teammates?
Nope, I think you covered it all. You can contact us at cassie@cde.ca.gov, and we will be sending out the slide deck for today, along with our contact information and the information sheet. That's not what we call it.
The resource page.
The resource page for today shortly. And in the last 4 minutes, does anyone have a question that just cannot wait until the next meeting? I don't see any hands. So I think we're going to sign off. Thanks, everyone.